You can see the progression. You can see the progression of the Democrat Party getting farther and farther and farther to the left. Why? Because the baby boomers, who were the biggest voting bloc, were voting these people into office and reelecting them. They weren't looking to like Don Draper. They were looking more like 30-something. Don Draper was not a baby boomer. He realized that he had to find himself. And when he realized and accepted who he was, he came up with one of the most iconic advertising campaigns ever. People still sing that song today. It's the real thing. And then we get to the baby boomers. As they get older and older, and they're starting to hit retirement age, we're hearing more and more whining from them. Social Security isn't what we thought it was going to be. It's not paying for my retirement. Well, you've been told this since the 80s not to totally rely on Social Security. But what do? Instead of saying, that Social Security is becoming an unmanageable juggernaut that's going to bring this country down, you, the baby boomer, are talking about, well, we need to put people into office who are going to save Social Security. And we're told by the Democrats that the Republicans, all they want to do is kill it. They want to rob from the rich or rob from the poor and give to the rich, which is a bunch of BS. It is. Don't make me say it on the air. Simply because the baby boomers didn't have the guts to look within themselves to find out who they really were, instead of this fantasy of who they wanted to be. In other words, even though baby boomers became the people they did not want to be, they never really grew up. And so now their kids, millennials, many of them, are doing the same things that they did, and they're caught between a rock and a hard place. No, don't do drugs. Well, and the kids are turning it on. Well, you did. How can you tell me no when you did it? And you did a lot of it. And with a lot of parents, they're still doing it. So how is a parent who is still doing it going to tell Junior not to do it? But, kids may not be getting the greatest education in public schools, but they're not idiots. They can see. They can tell. They know what they know what it's like and what people look like and act like and smell like when they're high on pot or other drugs. They know. Parents think that they're hiding it. They're not hiding it at all. And so now these millennials are growing up, and they're going into college, and they're graduating from college, and what are they doing? They're coming out whining too. Well, there are no jobs for the degree that I want. I want this kind of job, and there's no jobs available. I can't, so I'm going to live with mom and dad. And now mom and dad is, the baby boomers, they're caught between a rock and a hard place. It's hard for them to say, well, no, you can't do this, when that is exactly what they fostered. Because they were too damn selfish to do something about it when they had the chance for themselves. And frankly, people who do not like the finale of Mad Men, this is what I'm finding out. They are lamenting the fact that Mad Men was a big, huge effing slap in America's face. We were a nation of doers. We got things done. When we got confused, we figured it out. We didn't rely on government. We individually figured it out. Because you have to understand, this nation is nothing more than a group of individuals. It's all about the individual, not about the group. The individual makes up the group. And if you have a nation of strong individuals, you're going to have a strong national group. If you've got a nation full of whiny, complaining, don't know who they are individuals, you're going to have a very weak nation. This is where we are. See, I told you I'd bring this back around, folks. This is where we are. We're in a position, the United States has never, even in the very throes of the beginning of forming this country, I don't think we have ever been as weak as we are now. We have lost our way. We've lost our vision. Well, how can you say we lost our vision? Because we elected a man who doesn't like the United States, who wants to fundamentally change it into something that we will not recognize. And yet we elected him, and then we re-elected him, and then we re-elected him. And you say, well, he's only been president for 2 terms. Well, how did he get there in the first place? Well, he had to be elected to the legislature in Illinois, and then he had to be elected to the Senate of the United States. So he had to be elected and re-elected, and re-elected and re-elected. And then we elevated him to the wonderful job of the presidency of the United States of America. And then he did such a terrible job that we thought, well, maybe he can't get any worse in the second term. So we'll give him another chance. If this were proper, if this were the 70s or 80s, we would have turned him out. Carter didn't get a second chance. George H.W. Bush didn't get a second chance. Why all of a sudden are we giving people that we consider to be failures a second chance in politics? By any measure, by any stretch of the imagination, Obama's first term, by national standards, based on the Constitution, was an utter failure. Sure, he was very successful at getting his own policies implemented in the way and his transformation of the United States began. But other than that, he was an utter failure. And yet, we gave him another chance. We didn't give failures a second chance before now. See, well, we gave the Clintons a chance. Well, Bill Clinton wasn't an utter failure. I know we may not like, those of us who are conservatives may not like Bill Clinton, but he was not an utter failure. He was not on the level of Jimmy Carter. He just wasn't. Look, there's one thing you got to understand. I'm honest about this. I'm not a big Bill Clinton fan. But let's face it, he does not go down in history as one of the, top 5 worst presidents we've had, probably. He wasn't that bad, thankfully. But he set a precedence, though. He set a precedence that if he can get people uncomfortable enough, then the country will swing the other way. And then if the country swings the other way, they're going to get somebody that eventually doesn't do something because of the lamestream media keeps pounding and pounding and pounding. That, the American people, the baby boomers, begin to see, well, he's not really doing anything for me. He's not taking this burden off of me, my own responsibility. He's not doing it. And so, boom. We swing to somebody who says, we're going to fundamentally change this country. We're going to take care of everybody. And then you selfish, self-absorbed baby boomers who raised selfish, self-absorbed millennials decided to elect Barack Obama. And then you decide, well, everybody deserves a second chance. You gave him a second chance to double down on what he already tried to do his first term. You didn't look inside yourselves. Americans did not look inside themselves in 2012. They didn't. You can kind of understand them having, a hissy fit and a tantrum and that kind of thing because, what our nation, the population base became, and go with Barack Obama. One term. Look, they did it for Jimmy Carter. But then when the crap hit the fan, every major generation previous to the baby boomers looked within themselves, made the right choices and the right corrections. Baby boomers, on the other hand, they continued their whining ways from the 80s and decided, well, we want somebody else to take care of us. And they reelected him. Now, I'm admonishing you. You gotta look inside like Don Draper, because there is no external answer. There isn't one. Draper was a hugely flawed character. His moral compass was bent like you would not believe because of his own upbringing and his own ambition. But then when the crap hit the fan and he's like, I don't know who I am, what I want, what I'm doing, where am I going? And he's reflecting, midlife crisis, if you will. He did the right thing, did an introspective, looked to inside him, even went someplace that he thought he never would find himself, at this stupid retreat and commune. And boom, while he's sitting there meditating, one morning, it all becomes clear who he is. Through all the boozing, all the womanizing, all the lying, all the cheating, the backstabbing, all the blind ambition that he had, he saw clearly who he was, and he created one of the most iconic advertising campaigns ever. Because he looked inside. Anybody who has ever created anything great since that time period, still to this day, has done it from looking within, not going to some exterior force. Steve Jobs, he didn't look to government or some exterior force to build Apple. He looked inside. What do I have? What can I bring out of me to create the most iconic company, one of the most valuable companies ever created? How can I be that person to create that? It was Steve Jobs who said, it's got to come from me. Yeah, a lot of people looked at him and said, well, Steve Jobs was an ass. Maybe. Because he expected others to be as he was. And so if you were whiny, complaining, looking for external reasons and sources to become great, you were going to look at this guy who was internal as an ass. Because those two styles, those two beings, those two people are going to conflict. Look, I don't look to the outside. I understand fully that whatever I am to be is due to me, not what some government program can give me. And people who say, well, this black person and this, they benefited from affirmative action. Maybe getting their foot in the door, they did use affirmative action. But after that, Dr. Ben Carson, it was all him. Affirmative action may open a door for you, but it does not cause you to walk through the door. And once you walk through the door, it does not make you a success inside that room. You've got to produce and prove that you belong there. Plain and simple. This whole notion that things are external is wrong. External does not exist. Because when you try to make it exist, you manifest it in big. This is how people are so easily led into things like dictatorships and communism and socialism and fascism, because they're looking for external things to fix internal problems. Doesn't work that way. It never has in the history of mankind, and it never will. Mad Men was simply a reflection of all of that. And it came to a head in the season finale, and it was boom. People realizing that they were responsible for the choices they made in their life. And sometimes those choices led to cancer, led to death. And when those choices came about, they also needed to be able to recognize when they became a success, when they were trying for something specific, like Peggy. Folks, it's all about you. not about the government. So when you stop thinking government, that's when we'll be great again.